I'm Janice Rech, and this is Angie Hodge, and we're from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. And so this year we did Calc 1 in the fall and Calc 2 in the spring, and we're going to talk today about our experience with Calc 1. And I put out a bunch of cards to get you started, just to kind of give you a flavor of the activities that this course involved. We tried to do an activity-based approach to the course. So that was kind of just a warm-up for you. I hope most of you got a chance to see the cards that we gave with the matching activity that we had some of the students do. Who are we? As I said, we're both from UNO. Angie is a Project Next Fellow. She's been working with Comet, as well as the Special Projects Coordinator for the Academy of Inquiry-Based Learning. The thing that I bring to this, I think, is that first item that I work also for College Board. And so I'm a consultant for AP Calculus, which means I work with AP Calculus teachers. And this activity that I have set out here is an example of one of them that I have gotten from other calculus teachers. Some really, really strong AP Calculus teachers who have a wealth of information that they love to share with others. Why did we pick calculus? Well, because it was the gateway course for our STEM majors. And it was also one that many students had struggled with historically. And so we decided that was a good place to start, and that we had a big desire. Angie was brought in as a chair, community chair, with the challenge of creating more and better math teachers. So we thought, what a better place to start than the entry place for them, which is in the calculus sequence. So for us, what IBL meant was that the students are actively engaged. Few traditional lectures. Activities were selected to guide the students along. And I would say students gave presentations of their work, of their problems, but more than that, it was this activity approach, meaning they were doing things like these cards that I have set out, where they were engaged in small group discussions. The way that we started was with a small group of faculty. Angie and Stan and Dana gave a workshop on our campus last August. And so we invited faculty from across campus in the STEM fields to come to help get an understanding of what IBL meant. And then we identified the mentors, Angie, of course, being on our campus, to help assist not only me, but other faculty around campus in developing IBL techniques for all of our classrooms. So what did it look like at UNO for us? Well, the first thing was looking at our classroom. Angie and I every day would walk about half mile each way, back and forth, to get to the building that had a classroom that had tables and chairs. Because there was nothing in our room, or in our building, and no rooms that were equipped with tables and chairs for us to work with. So that was the first thing, which was just the physical setup. We didn't have it in our building. And so that also was challenges to how to coordinate getting down there and getting back and bringing everything with you, because you can't run back to your office, et cetera. So that was a challenge. And that the little introduction, the worksheets distributed regularly with students were working together. We gave just kind of a little bit of a heads up to students. This is what we're going to do today, and then kind of turn them loose. And we'd spend the rest of the period going around and troubleshooting, and when there was issues that kind of were flaring up, then maybe have someone get up and talk about what they were doing to try to get students discussing it. We did use a traditional University Calculus, Haas's University Calculus textbook, and that was used more to supplement the work that we were doing. All their homework, though, came out of there, and we collected homework every single day from our students. So our students still were handing in traditional, really, homework on the side. The group structure with students were self-selected at the beginning of the semester, and then I at least reorganized my students midway through to try to get stronger students and weaker students together. And then some actually went back. I told them, you have to stay in these new groups for 2 weeks, and then you can go back to your old group if you want. And only one group reorganized themselves. The rest of them finally, even though they were very opposed at first to having to sit at a different table and sit with different students, it actually did work. Do you want to take over there, Angie?
Sure. Homework and assessments. I think Janice talked a little about homework was collected daily. And something we did to save time, there's this content coverage issue. How do we do these activities like this, for instance? This activity took an entire day. So you notice you have a function, its derivative, its second derivative, and they had to match them up, and we didn't even really tell them what to do. They just automatically kind of started. In fact, they would get to class about 15 minutes early because they knew if they got there early, they could get a head start on stuff, on the worksheets or activities we were doing. And so those are some of the things we did without lecture, but we did have this homework that went with it. But how do we save time to do those sorts of things? We didn't have quizzes in class, unless there were a couple things where you have to know your derivatives, right? You have to be tested on those without a calculator, without anything, just really quick quiz. But most of the quizzes were given weekly take-home. They could work with each other in groups. It modeled that assessment piece of it. We had 2-part tests. It was in class, and in class parts, sometimes there were calculator, sometimes non-calculator, depending on the material. And in fact, at the end, we had non-calculator and calculator parts to our exams. And the take-home was they could use any resources they want. The problems were harder. They were more challenging. They were more conceptual. They pushed them further. Students almost had to work together to develop those ideas, talk about things. You could hear them arguing. I sometimes went to our help session room beforehand just to listen to them, and they were arguing about the mathematics in there. So even though that's something that's traditionally in the quizzes and all the tests in the classroom, taking it outside let us push this IBL further. And tests were significantly harder than before. It wasn't just the rote skills, those were still in there, but even those skills were pushed further, and we had a lot of conceptual stuff added. The IBL part of the assessment, students were also graded on participation. This is the first time I've ever put any sort of participation grade in the courses, even though if I've done inquiry-based stuff, I haven't done that before. We had 5% of our grade based on participation. And we just said they had to get at least X amount of presentations that they had to do, no right, no wrong. They had to be there in class, they had to work in their groups. Really, this wasn't a problem at all, except for the one student who never showed up, but then they couldn't pass the test anyway, right? The person who didn't show up was a person who wasn't doing well. Everyone else did very well. What I did with that is I actually had them self-assess themselves midway and at the end of the semester, and they were pretty honest and actually improved after they did that midterm evaluation, saying, okay, here's how I would grade myself on participation. Group activities, we've talked about this a little bit, but many of them came from the AP exam, the AP calculus things. So having Janice as a resource, if you have someone that's worked with AP materials, that was great for me. I didn't know this stuff was out there. We're looking for IBL stuff, and there's a whole host, especially for Calc 1. Calc 2, we had a little harder time, but Calc 1, there's tons of stuff out there where it's hands-on, minds-on, engaging, and really even their questions, if you look at old AP exams, are good questions for that as well. And they're all available on the web, or a lot of them are available on the web. Sample classroom activity, I think I've talked about this a little bit, and it really got them to understand this concept. I don't know about you all, but if I've asked a question like this on the exams before, or even as a grad student at Purdue, they always had a question like this, match the function to its derivative. They just couldn't do it. But without telling them, they were able to have some really good discussions, and I think every group, by the time class was over, and this was a 65-minute class, so it took a full 65 minutes to sort these cards, but they all sorted the cards, and then some of the harder ones at the end, we had students present and make sure everyone got the main ideas and summarized what we learned in there. Outside of class, probably the top one was one of the biggest keys to what we did in the classroom. We had a homework room every day, and this was Janice's idea and to start with, and it is key for creating that classroom environment, this collaborative, we're working together. We had an hour to an hour and a half, depending on our schedules, of a room with tables set up where students could come and do their homework, and I came in there as well. And they would come there every day. Whether they had homework or not homework by the end of the semester, they kind of became friends in that room and really worked hard on those assignments together. And they knew that we were there, but at the end, it was mainly them asking each other questions. They didn't even come to us anymore unless they were all really stuck. Sometimes I just sat there going, okay, I'm kind of bored. You guys can ask me something. But it was good. They were looking to each other versus us.
Well, and I want to add to that just a moment, because I ran into the Calc 3 teacher this summer, and he said to me, I have never seen students like this, that just like this little group, and they have to get together before class and do their homework. And they were our students that had come through us in Calc 1 and 2 that now have carried that on. And to me, I just see that as a win-win as they progress through their math courses, that idea of always then continuing to work together.
And a lot of them are peer pressuring each other to become math majors too, which is kind of cool. Did IBL Calculus work for us? The student reactions were definitely different. I mean, we had some students that loved it, other students that commented, oh, we need more notes, more lecture. But for the most part, what we saw was grades were way, way high, like over 50% A's in Calc 2, and not because the exams were easier. And I gave them just as much homework as usual, if not more, because they had these hard quizzes that went along with it to take home on top of the homework, challenging questions, but they were there working hard. They were there an hour to an hour and a half early every day. After class, I had to almost kick them out after 15 minutes, 20 minutes afterwards, because I'd have to get to another meeting somewhere, or just leave them in there working, and when there wasn't a class afterwards. So grades were higher, but it definitely wasn't because we were padding those grades. They were working hard and earning them. Other measures of success, class attendance, very high. I myself even had students who had dropped the course and were still coming to class because they thought, well, I'll have to take this again, but they said that they were learning and they didn't think they could learn this way from anybody else unless they were in one of our classes and doing this IBL stuff. So almost every day, perfect attendance. And when they didn't come there, they let us know, they talked to other students, they really wanted to be there in class. And again, like I said, a number of students have switched to math ed, and we have some that are on the cusp, and I think about 3/4 of the class or more decided to do at least math minors after taking one of our classes. Some sample student responses. So what I had done is I went through all my Calc 1, Calc 2 things last night, and I kind of went through them and said, what are the reactions? And there's the common, give me more notes. Oh, I love this. I love the group work. And those weren't very exciting. I could read a bunch of those said in different ways and whether they liked it or didn't like it. But I thought of one thing that I got May 7th. So from a student that almost made me cry. And these are the kind of comments that I think both Janice and I have received emails, even though sometimes they might be fighting and wanting more lecture. They come to us a little later and say things like, Dr. Hodge, after being back home only a couple of days, I realized how great my Calc 1 and 2 classes are. Many of my friends and family asked what I liked most about UNO. And after thinking about it, I told them, well, actually, I'd have to say it was my experience I had in both my math classes. I never ever would have thought that my calculus in college would have been that much of a good impact. I showed a lot of family our LHOP video. If you go to our blog, some of my students created a video. And they thought it was hilarious, and even thought, though they had no clue about what it's about, don't worry, I filled them in. Thanks for the great year and for your abilities, patience with our class, and also for helping me with my minor. So this is a student who was an undeclared major, taking this just because he didn't know what he wanted to do. And I think both Janice and I saw that, the impact of these classes, and not right away. He wasn't a stellar student to start. In fact, he was a lower student in class to start. And he started working with one of the higher students next to him. And before you know it, towards the end of Calc 1, they're kind of going back and forth on, I got a higher grade than him. I actually taught him something. Or when he'd help him with something, he's like, I helped Steven. I helped him. So this was the impact that we can make by fighting the give me more notes. So it really worked, using those tried and true AP calculus activities, and hopefully we can develop more of those types of things for Calc 2, for Calc 3, if we all work together. It's a lot of work, so we have to work together. Without Janice, I don't think that I would have been able to do this. I've wanted to do it for years, and it took a partner. Use of take-home quizzes and tests, again, that allowed us to do more conceptual things. The daily homework room, I can't stress how important that was. It seems just like a simple thing, but it created that community of learners working together. Concerns of students, again, some of them didn't like it. Some of them rather have note-taking. I think we both thought and talked about the marketing piece, and also first day of class saying, if you want someone to lecture at you, you can go down the hall and take somebody else's class. So-and-so is great at lecturing. So, but also those some that do stay in our class that think they like lecturing have changed their minds. So be aware that that does happen if you're worried about your evaluations, but at the same time, there's still liking, just as many people, if not more, liking what we're doing. And then the last thing, again, bouncing ideas off each other. We met a couple times a week. We had a scheduled weekly meeting, but we'd talk more often than that. When we'd miss our meeting, we were in trouble. We knew that when we missed our meeting, we had to almost call each other. And that's our end. What can we do better? Create groups more effectively. That's something we still are not sure about. Marketing, engage students from right at the beginning, opening the class that way, and balance the use of technology. We had some students that fought when we took away their calculators. We do it again, and we're at the end of our time, so here's some things you can think about for future of IBL calculus, and all kind of coming together, and I'll stop there.